because I don't want today to be a total loss, let me talk about what's on the screen right here, okay? Now, just so you know, you may or may not have noticed this, but if I come down here and I start up Xcode, and hopefully it's going to start up. Maybe you can see it. I just get the little twirly thing on the bottom of the screen, and I had to shut it down because it had totally locked. But the point is, when Xcode comes up, one of the things it asks you that you can do is create you can create a playground. You can also go in and under Xcode, you can go File, New, Playground. Now, I'm not exactly sure why, but in most of the documentation that I've read, they recommend you do it that way. Did you hear what I said? All right, in most of the documentation that I've read, even though you can do it right from the Xcode welcome window, they recommend that you do it this way. And I've read it in 3 different books. So I'm not sure why, but that's the way that I did it, and I haven't had any problems doing that, getting into Xcode, doing the new, and then going over to Playground. Okay? All right. So once you do that, it comes up and it asks you for a name. You can see the default name, it's My Playground. So this is where I typed in prime number playground or whatever the heck yours is called. All right, I'll just leave it here as My Playground. I don't think I've got a My Playground right now. Now, if you look here, this says iOS, and the other one is OS X. See that up on the screen right there? If you pick iOS like we have right here, it's going to say at the top of your screen, Import UI Kit. If you pick the other one, I think it says Import Foundation. The newer one, the later and greater one, the one that you use for mobile apps, is the one that's already highlighted. So you should never have to change this, okay, for anything that you do in a playground. And again, so what's a playground? All right, I'm going to keep it the way it is. I'm going to click Next, and it's going to ask me, sooner or later, it's going to say, where do you want to save this? All right, so I'm just going to save it right to the desktop where I've got everything else. And looking here, I don't have a My Playground right now. So I'll click Create. All right, and there's your playground. So that's how you create one. Hopefully that makes sense to people. Playgrounds are designed for a single file that you create. So in other words, you would create a whole big app using a playground, but you can create bits and pieces using a playground. All right, or you can create a bunch of different playgrounds and then actually import them into a project, for lack of better words. All right, so right now you see this, and I'm going to take the one that's here, and I'm going to, the new one, and I'm just going to minimize it. And what people who might be watching this, well, you got my sympathy, but if people are watching this, what they're going to be seeing is I can bring the file up. So I can bring up, it's actually called section_1.swift. I can bring it up on here, but I don't get the playground because I'm not looking at it on a Mac. Does that make sense to people? So what I'm saying is if somebody watches this tape, what they're going to see from what you got on the screen, imagine that it got cut off, but the last third of the screen isn't there. So you see the code that's over here where I'm taping. You don't see the stuff that's over there. Does that all make sense? All right. So let's just talk about what's in there. Again, the only things that were in there when I started was there was some kind of a comment, and that might have even been it. Again, this is import UI kit because we chose iOS, and then there was something like, it said like, what is it, var str equals hello playground or something like that. And you saw that, you saw that over on the side. But let's just take a quick look at what's over here. All right. Okay, the first thing that you can see here on lines 5 and 6 is I create 2 variables. And I let the system infer the type of variable that they are. Again, it would have been legit for me to have come in here and said var number, all right, and as an example, I could have said colon int, all right, and var is prime colon, you need a space there, bool, all right, so we could have done that. There has been no actual recommendation from Apple so far that I have read, at least, that says you get any more out of directly putting in the data type like that. That it runs faster, that it's better, etc. I have seen on a couple of sites and in a couple of books, they actually say, you know what, the way that this compiler and all the stuff that's in here has been optimized, you're better off, if you don't have to put something in, you're better off not putting it in. Does that make sense? All right. So we're creating two variables here on lines 5 and 6. You'll notice as soon as I create the variable, for instance, if I change this from 19 right here, if I just change it here to 29, and I hit enter, it might take a second, but the whole screen is going to upgrade on the right as far as what the output is. All right. And again, isPrime it knows that it's a Boolean and it's got a value of 2. Mike had asked this last time, but again, everywhere where you've got the if statements and the for, etc., if you feel better, put the parens in there. Again, it doesn't matter one way or the other. So again, if you're watching this on tape, I'm talking about here, and I'm talking about here, and here, etc. All right. One thing to realize about this, and again, we're going to get into this, just not right now, is, again, as I mentioned the other day, this is a very, very pure language. All right. And the reason that I'm telling you this is I've gone back and I've unfortunately, this is the old version. It works. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it the way that it is. This could be optimized quite a bit. And I optimized it. Of course, I thought I had that flash drive with me, and I don't. All right, so I'll bring that with me next time, and I'll give you another copy of this. But the point is, I don't know about you, but this might be the first time in my life I ever wrote a for loop that looks like that, that's got var I equals 2.0 as opposed to equal 2. And the reason that I have it like that is that when you're working with some of the stuff that's in here, and I tried to optimize it so I'd be able to use it with square roots. The square root is expecting that you're using doubles. A lot of the built-in functions that you have in this language expect doubles. All right? And I tried to go in and I did some work with trying to cast and do some other stuff. It didn't like a lot of the stuff that I did. All right? I'd get it to work and then I'd rip it apart and start playing with it again. Notice that on line 14 here, this worked. I was able to do a cast, and it had absolutely no problem with that. All right? And the reason that I'm doing that is because, again, down later on, when we're working with this, some of the stuff that we're going to be using is going to require doubles. But let's just walk through it basically, again, line by line. So the two variables, then we're checking. This is, you could call this a kludge, you could call this a cheat, you could call this whatever you want. But to me, there was really no sense if it was 1 to check whether or not it was prime. Okay, like I said, you may or may not agree with that. Okay? All right, so I just said if it was 1, isPrime was set to false. Okay? Then as we work our way down here, I've got another variable. It says var temp equals number divided by 2. So number is whatever number you put in there. All right? So again, when you look on here, you might ask, why did you do this? I understand everything, but why did you make that and then make that a double? Well, it has to do with some optimization that I did in a later version, but the point is this. You may or may not know this. If I've got a prime number, and I don't know if this is prime or not, I don't care, but I've got 919. All right. The worst way for me to write this code would be to check every number between 2 and 919 to see whether or not it went in there evenly. Would you agree with that? That'd be about the worst way to do it. I know 1 goes into it, and I know 919 goes into it, but if I checked every number between 2 and 918, okay, I'd be doing 917 checks, which would be really stupid. Okay? Well, one way I could immediately cut it in half is I would only have to go up to half of this. All right, so half of this is approximately 460, correct? So I could cut it down, so instead of going from 2 to 919, I'd be going from 2 to 460. And the only reason I'm showing you that, and you all get it, I understand that, but I've already cut down the number of checks I'm making in half. All right? There's so many ways that this could be optimized, and I started to do it. For example, if you look in here, this is where we're going through it. if the numbers modulo 2 equals 0, that's going to get rid of all the even numbers, correct? So when I'm going between 2 and 460, now I've cut down the number of checks I'm making again in half. So let's assume, 2 to 460, I was making approximately 458 checks. So I cut it down from here to here to here, and now I've cut that in half down to 229. All right? You may or may not be aware of this, but it is a mathematical rule. It is a mathematical rule that all you have to go up to see if a number is prime or not is the square root of the number. It's not a rule I made up. It is a rule. All right? So if I did this, it's going to come up to 30 point something. Would everybody agree with that? I don't know what. I really don't care. But it's going to come up to 30 point something. What I attempted to do down here was to force it up to the next highest number. So if it came out to 30.4, I still want to go all the way up to 31. Just as a safety check, okay? So that's why I put all that stuff in there. Now, I don't know if what I just said made sense or not, but the idea is if it's 30, and if I immediately check and get rid in here and get rid of, if I get rid, check right away for the ones that are divisible by 2, now I'm going to have to just check all the even numbers between 3 and 30, and technically between 3 and 29. So it's 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 15, 17, 19, 21, 23, 25, 27, 29, and that's it. Again, if it was 30 point something, also I guess 31. But the point is, we started with 919 numbers. Then we talked about checking everything except 1 and the numbers, so 917 numbers. So we've cut it down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15 or 16. That's about as optimal as you can get it. Now, are there still other things we could have done? The answer is yes. All right, as an example, instead of starting at 2 and going up by 1 every time, we could have started with 3 and gone up by 2 every time. Does that make sense? That would have been a way to even write the code even a little bit better. So what you're able to do in here, and you can do it in a project also, but the advantage of doing something like this, like we've seen right here, and doing it in the playground, is you get immediate feedback. All right? And if you do something wrong, you also get immediate feedback. All right? You're just not going to get an answer there. And you will get errors over here. So if I come through in here, down below, where we've got var number equal 29. So if I put another line in here that says number equals Jeff, and I hit enter, you can see right away that I get the red. And if I take the mouse and I put it over there and click, it says type int does not conform to protocol. All right? And you might say, well, big deal. I know that. But the point is, that would not have compiled either. All right? But this will catch a lot of the errors that you're probably going to make. So what I did, and this is why I wanted to show you this, what I did was I took the one that we created originally, the one that we're looking at on the screen right now, all right? And from there, I ended up creating this Xcode project out of it. And again, for those who might be watching the tape, I'm going to now see if I can open that. So what you see over here, just so everybody can see this, is I've got my editor over here on the left, or on the right, I should say, sorry. And on the left, I've got the actual GUI. All right, and I've been playing around a lot with the different stuff that's in here. if you've never seen any of this stuff before, if it looks funky to you or if it doesn't make any sense, especially those of you who were not in the class last semester, don't let that bother you, really. We're going to go over all that stuff. What I'm more concerned with is that you look and you notice that basically, did I have to make changes, upgrades, etc.? Yes. But basically, I took the same stuff that we had in the playground and just dropped it in here. All right? Now, what you find out when you do that is that Xcode, when you write an Xcode project, it's not nearly as forgiving as the playground is. So the playground will let you get away with some stuff. It's kind of like the difference, for lack of better words, between JavaScript and Java. In JavaScript, if you remember, if you forgot to do something, normally the system would do it for you and it would guess and it would almost guess right. Almost always guess right. Whereas in Java, you start using a variable, for example, before you've declared it, the program blows up. It's kind of the same type of thing in here. The playground will make assumptions and will most times assume right. All right? But when you put it in here, it can't make that assumption. And what do I mean? I want to just quickly show you an example of what I mean, and that's this. It says var unwrapped number equals number int with an exclamation point right there. That exclamation point, basically what that's saying is it's possible that that value will not, but when I run the program, there will not be a value there. And because this is such a type safe and such a safe type of language, what it does is when you attempt to run a program and the system says, oh, you didn't initialize that variable, and there is a chance since you didn't initialize it, it'll have a value of nil when the program runs. Nil is kind of like null, all right, unknown. And so what it says is, oh, you didn't initialize that and you didn't account for it, so I'm going to flag that as an error. Because it's possible that when you run the program, all right, you're going to need to use that and there won't be a value there. All right, so what I'm saying is I was able to import much of the stuff that you see in here, all right, much of the stuff that you see in here, I was able to import that directly into here. Literally, I just did copy and paste, but then I had to make changes to it. Does that make sense? All right. Yes. 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 The question, okay. Let me, you tell me if I'm answering your question, okay? What I want to do is I want to put the number in here. You can't see that, but there is a text field right there. All right? What that is doing is that's saying take the number that's been put in there, take the number that's been put in there and convert it to an int, because in here it's automatically a string. All right? Where we didn't have that to worry about before, because when we worked on the playground, it's totally non-GUI. You could make the case that I could say, you know what we ought to be doing in here for the first 1, 2, 3, whatever weeks is never doing anything GUI. Just doing everything from the playground. Because in a way, that's kind of what I did with you guys in Java, and it's what I'm doing with the first year people in Java. Because it's forcing you to concentrate just on the language. All right. The problem, though, is once you move in, you're probably never going to develop an app that's going to be totally non-GUI. You know, most people are not going to do that. So you've already learned some habits that aren't terrific habits. So most of the stuff that we did before will directly be relatable in here, but you will have to make some changes. So I don't know if I answered your question or not. All right. All right. Yes. They could just leave it blank. Yeah. Right. Now, listen to what Mark just said. He said, well, if somebody runs the program, they could just type NINE in there. And I'm going to tell you yes and no. Yes, they could, but no, the way that we set it up, they can't. And what I mean by that is when we click on this and we go over there to where we've got our inspectors over there, we've set the keyboard type to numeric. But it still is possible, even with numeric, to leave it blank. So unless you've got a default value, all right, you need to do something like that. And even technically, since it's such a pure language, even if I put 5 in there, it's not the number 5, it's the string 5, which has no arithmetic value. So that's what we're telling it right there, is to take whatever value we put in there and convert it to an int. But if you notice, when we do that, we only do it if it's not equal to nil. And the only time it's going to be nil is if we put nothing in there. So if we put nothing in there, we're going to come down, as you'll see when I just arrow down here. No, it is still a string. All right. So otherwise, it's going to hit an else down here that's going to just say, please enter a number. All right. So let me just show you. Hopefully this will help. So I'm going to run this. Now this is a simulator, not an emulator, but I haven't had problems with this simulator. We'll see. Probably shouldn't say that, after all that, but that's correct. But other people will tell you, yeah, but it's worse because you're running in a Mac. All right. I told you last year that Tony Reynolds said that Mac is the ultimate 4-letter word. It's just like anything. It's what you're used to. That's what I always tell people. All right. Why aren't you coming up? I don't know. I shouldn't have to do that. Should be written. Come on. So is it prime? Enter a number in the box. That's the text field. So if I click in there, notice what comes up. Don't make me a liar, okay? There you go. Yeah, and I'm not, I had problems with this the other day. No matter how much I slid it down and up, there we go. All right, but I can't slide it down too much because of the way that the interface is set up. I should have moved that down a little. But notice, for example, 2. All right, prime, that's a button. 2 is prime. All right. 3, 23. 23 is prime. 232. All right. Is it pretty obvious then what's going on in there? All right. So this is what I'm going to charge you with right now. This is what I'd like people to do. And I'm going to do the same thing. All right. You've already got this playground, okay? And in here, you have an example of how you could possibly write a prime number program, okay? I'd like you to see if you can do this, everybody in here, and I'm going to just give you the rest of the period. Take a break now, it's 10 to 4, but from 4 o'clock till 4:30 or however long it takes, all right, I'd like you to try to rewrite this using your own stuff. Then what I'm going to do with you is what I'll show you on Tuesday when we first start. We're going to do 2 things. First thing we're going to do is you're going to look at the way I did it. And you might think your way's better, which is great. Or you might think the way I did it is better, which is fine too. And as soon as we get done with that, all right, we're going to sit there and basically put that into the background. Then we're going to create a brand new project. All right? Not a playground like this, but a project. And we're going to start incorporating that code in and you're going to see with the stuff that we talked about, as we start to incorporate the code in, the first thing we're going to do is we'll build an interface somewhat similar to what I've just shown you. All right, a simple interface like this. All right, and then we'll come in and we'll add the code, and you'll see where some of the discrepancies that I've mentioned to you are. It's one thing to say them to you, it's another one for you to see them on your screen. Does all that make sense? So I want you to come in just like I did, and this is what I'm going to do after I take a break. All right, I want you to come in here and do a File, New, Playground. Call it whatever you want to call it, you know. No, Jeff's Prime Number Playground. All right, next, just save it right to your desktop, and we've got this. And I want you to come up and try to come up with your own, little prime number program. Okay? You can do it similar to the way that I showed it here. You can print that out if you need to or whatever. I can print them out if you want a hard copy. I don't care. I've got it here anyway without the other stuff, but I've got it right there. So if you want that, I can print out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 6 or 7 copies. I don't care. But I'd like you to start putting in, you put in your own logic. So if you think the way I did it is good, fine. If you don't think it's good, that's also fine. And write your own. And then what we'll do for the next class is we will add a GUI to that. And you've got your choice then. You can either take the one that I'll have, if you like that, and I'll give everybody a copy, or you can do your own. Okay? But we'll write the same GUI because I want to show you how you have to start wiring up your controls. Some of you remember this from last semester, where we did the control, held down on the control, and we dragged, etc. But again, we've got 3 or 4 people who were not in this class last semester, and it never hurts to review for anybody. So that's the plan. I was just going to print out one program.